Evan, how you doing? Are you on mute or I'm not sure. I can't hear. This must be all right.
Hello.
Here we are. How are you?
Good, thanks, mate. How you doing?
Excellent. Looking forward to this conversation. How's your day been so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty good, man. It's only 10:30 on my side. I'm in California right now, so bit of a time delay in the time zones, I guess. But yeah, been a nice slow morning. Yeah.
Nice one. All right, so I'll introduce you a little bit to the other men that are on the call here. They're part of my network with Uncommon Success, but yeah, I want to have a conversation with you because I saw your Instagram and I was like, this young man is very inspired by what he's doing. Some of the things that you're talking about with the way that you're thinking about kicking the ball as being, your best expression of yourself and these kind of steps are things that I think really resonate strongly with our network. What I know of you so far is that you were very into rugby and kicking the ball and playing rugby in the UK, and then you saw an opportunity, or you had an opportunity to go to high school in the US for a bit, and then that led you into college in the States. Is that correct, or have I messed that up?
No, you're pretty close. Yeah, I basically was playing rugby back in Wales, and if I'm honest with you, mate, it was adversity that sort of triggered me to make the leap to the US. So I got dropped from the Cardiff Blues Academy back in Wales. They effectively said I was too small, and I was in this position where I was like, what can I do? I already work my ass off to be as good as I can be, and you're just saying my bones aren't big enough, basically. So when that happened, I was like, right, Wales probably isn't the place for me. I'm still determined to keep doing what I love, but I guess I can't do it to the level I want to do it in Wales, just because of the way that I guess the academy system was set up. So I started looking for alternative opportunities, and that's where the US came into it. They were offering rugby scholarships to play in college. So they call it college, we call it university. So I went out to do a biology degree at a place called Lindenwood University, where I'd also have a rugby scholarship to play for their varsity program. 4 years of that went by, did really well. Basically fell in love with kicking as a sort of side thing, because I was so passionate about being great at rugby that I noticed one of my strengths was kicking, and I basically just fell in love with going out after practice, before practice, by myself, just doing extra work, really, mate. And these sessions by myself where I was just working on my craft of kicking ended up, I guess, now becoming my main thing, right? And it's pretty funny because, I started doing it in the name of becoming a better rugby player, but the craft itself kind of took me on a different path. Obviously, being in America, people start suggesting you should try kicking a football. So that's where that came around. And yeah, I guess I got to a point where my ability was as I guess prominent as my passion. So naturally I was sort of an attractive kicker in the eyes of college football coaches, and I had a few offers thrown at me to go and kick in college then, and I ended up taking it, man. So I finished my biology degree, graduated from there, and then took this last sort of bit of eligibility to go and take the opportunity to play football. And today that's what I'm doing. And yeah, man, it's basically just love of a craft that's turned into something bigger than I had ever imagined, I guess.
How was it when you first kicked the American football, really kicking the rugby ball? Do you remember those first couple of sessions?
Yeah, mate, not easy. I remember thinking it's like a rock compared to a rugby ball, because rugby balls are like these big beach balls is what I compare them to now. But yeah, I guess I had enough sort of muscle memory in the bank where I could sort of just figure things out and just make the little adjustments necessary.
Yeah.
But yeah, mate, like the things like you can't hit the point on the football, right? Because it's so pointy. So that took some getting used to, because with a rugby ball, you can just smack the point and it'll pretty much go dead straight. But with a football, you got to be a bit more of a technician with it, kind of figure out where the sweet spot is and line that up with the right part of your foot. So it's a bit more technical, I'd say, but definitely a fulfilling sort of process of figuring that out.
What about, because a lot of the guys that are tuning in here and people in my audience, generally like fitness businesses or wanting to build online businesses, is quite an entrepreneurial side to it. And a lot of people, when they think of that, they think of social media. And your social media stuff is quite captivating. You're doing some cool stuff there. Like, where did that come in for you? Did that come directly from rugby, or did it start with gaming, or like what's the history for you in social media, and what part does that play in the journey of sort of broadcasting your pathway?
I think you just answered it right there, mate. There was never an ulterior motive to try and like turn something, like I was never sort of like, right, I want to be a businessman as well, and I want to grow a huge brand. It came from love, man. It was me spending hours and hours and hours out kicking, doing what I love, and kind of coming back from the field going like, man, I wish I could share this with people. Like, I really love this thing and I just want to put it out there. So I just thought, right, I guess I could just record myself. And I personally think the reason my content does so well and gets lots of engagement is because it's literally me doing what I love and expressing it very authentically. There's no sort of, I'm not trying to deceive anyone. I'm not trying to, I'm not here going, oh, I need to be famous or I need to get lots of likes. It never was that. It was always just, I'm doing something here that sort of lights me up and gets me going. So why don't I share that with the world? Because I know there's people out there that would probably see this and go, you know what? I want to do something like that. That's kind of the core of it, mate. Yeah.
Have you connected with other kickers? Like, what has it led to actually putting that stuff out there other than this call today? What else has it led to from putting that message out there?
Yeah. So what's beautiful about it is you start to sort of cross paths with other people who just love what they do. Like I made a video a couple of days ago with Perry Baker, the USA Sevens winger, and he's done some incredible things on the Sevens circuit. And basically I was training at the facility he was training at, and we just got talking, and you have this thing in common where it's like, he loves what he does, I love what I do, and they're both within the realm of sport. I know I'm football, he's rugby, but we've both got similar paths in that respect of, he went from football to rugby, I went from rugby to football. But anyway, he would not have known about me had I not put myself out there in that sense. So the opportunities to sort of meet these people and kind of just sort of enjoy each other's company over this mutual passion you have. But yeah, it's like, I would not meet people who operate on that level had I not put it out myself. And so I see it more as like, right, me expressing my passion for what I do is my ticket to meeting more people in that circle. And as I'm sure the people in your group are well aware of, it's all about who you surround yourself by, right? And if you're surrounding yourself by people who are very like-minded and driven and passionate with what they do, I think it can only be good for you, man. I'm in the process of putting a video together now, actually, where I had an experience learning from an ex-NFL kicker named John Carney. And again, man, I took so much value from that small interaction with him, because he dissected my technique and was like, look, man, you do this thing. Have you ever noticed that? And it's those little sort of attention to detail that you wouldn't get with someone who isn't passionate about what they do. But when
Yeah.
you're in that same mindset as each other, is like, I want to be as great as possible at this thing we both love, you can just open up this whole new world of like possibilities, basically. But again, it all comes from just being in the company, in the presence of people who are of the same sort of mindset as you, man. And yeah, if my page demonstrates anything, I think it's just love and passion for something.
100%, you can see that there. The editing side of things, and you know, actually putting things together, composing. How do you feel about that? Because a lot of people have strong resistance about being judged, or even just finding the process itself tedious. I tend to find it more so tedious. Like, I've been putting stuff out there for nearly 20 years. I started writing my first blogs and things, and then that's morphed through different interests over the years. But for a lot of men, they feel paralyzed about being judged, or that tedious side of things. Like, you dealt with either of those? Do you still?
No, like there's a funny, I guess I do things differently in the sense, like, I know that a lot of content creators out there, they listen to guys like Gary Vee, who says, make as much content as possible, make one piece of content every day. Sometimes he says, like, do multiple. I'm not driven by content, like I've said. I'm driven by what I love. So I don't make a piece of content unless I feel the need to go and make content. So it's funny, man, when I'm making my videos, it's probably the most exciting part of my day. Because I'll be there with this vision in my mind of, right, I want to go and do this on the field today, and I'm going to capture it in this way and share it with the world. And you sit there and you look back at the footage and you start editing, you putting it together. And for some reason, I get a fire in my belly when I'm doing it, man. I literally love it. But if someone had told me, oh, we need you to make 2 pieces of content every day, I can definitely see myself falling into that sort of pattern of, oh, I've got to do this now, have I? So yeah, I would just say, don't let the sort of the corporate world, I guess, get involved too much with your creative journey, because creativity can't be rushed. And, you know, your love for something is very natural, and it happens, you know, quite authentically, I think. So you shouldn't try and, don't let the tail wag the dog, right? That's what they say, where it's, you know, you're sort of letting an outside circumstance dictate your current process, which isn't the idea.
But if we applied that to kicking the ball, are you the same way with that you only do it when you feel like it, or are you quite regimented of, like, I'm going to spend some time on this pretty consistently?
That's a great question, mate. So obviously I don't have the luxury of picking when I kick, especially in football, man. It's you don't even get to pick when you start your run up in football. But that's where I guess you have to make a few adjustments in terms of finding ways to love the circumstance you're put in, right?
Yeah.
So I say I'm driven by love in the sense of making content, but when you're in a situation that requires something of you in this moment, you can't influence that. That's already decided for you. So then all that is in my influence then is how I decide to perceive that situation. So, you know, a lot of people would see kicking as this highly stressful activity in a football game. You only get to go on a handful of times, and you have to execute. It's not a very nice circumstance, to be honest. It's pretty cutthroat. But if you choose to look at it that way, you're probably never going to like it. So I was like, right, instead, why don't I just change the way I see it? And for me now, it's not actually about the kick itself going through the posts, because you're going to miss. It's inevitable. You're going to miss. So it's not about that for me anymore. What it's about now is this long-term journey I'm on. I love kicking, and I understand that to be great at anything, you have to make mistakes. So I embrace the cutthroat nature of it, the possibility that I might miss. These are all just part of the journey of getting better. So for me, the vision isn't about making the field goal or making the great punt. It's about riding this fun journey of being a kicker, a great kicker. And that's going to require a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows. But the most important part of it is that you just keep going because you enjoy it. But yeah, it's like if the moment you start losing that enjoyment for something, I think you've got two options. You either stop doing it or you find a way to enjoy it by changing your perspective on it. So that's been huge for me, is just being like, right, man, in those moments where you do feel low, you could give up, you could, or you could just shift your perspective on it and say, right, how is this miss actually good for my process? How is this good for me? Why is this fun? You know what I mean? And I think taking a look at the bigger picture will help that. So there's probably a lot of people out there that maybe find themselves in these sort of situations where, you know, they've taken on responsibilities or whatever that maybe they don't like, but they need to sort of just take a step back and look bigger picture and say, right, how is this good for me? Why is this fun for me? And sort of hang on to that idea rather than why is this shit or whatever, you know?
I love that. I want to give you a little bit, because you probably don't know anything about me, but my background is working in rugby. I worked with Sonny Bill Williams. I was his personal coach for a few.
Nice.
I worked with him at the Sydney Roosters for 2 years, you know, as his strength. We got on very well, and he's really someone who pursues excellence. I had the chance to train with Quade Cooper a couple of times through him as well, and he was phenomenal with his attention to detail, knowledge of his game, and that sort of stuff. Like, it blew me away compared to any rugby league player that I'd worked with. I worked in rugby league, and so but I worked with the Aussie Sevens players a couple of times. Yeah, Trey Williams, who ran a 10-10, was a fair athlete in the.
Yeah, he's pretty quick, isn't he?
Yeah. But I left behind that to pursue building a culture that I wanted to be part of even more than being in pro rugby. Like, it was fun to be in pro rugby and work with those guys, but there were limitations to that environment as far as how far I was going to develop. After I'd done it for a number of years, I sort of knew that an end to that. And so I became a mentor for other coaches, and I've been sort of doing that and traveling the world and teaching and building online things. And it's been quite different to what I thought it would be, but it's been a lot of fun too. Right now I'm in Montenegro, in a tiny house in a village that I'm building, and we just arrived. Wow. We arrived back here after some time in California, Florida, and we did a lap around the world. I got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old and a beautiful wife, and we just did a lap around the world and came back to Montenegro, where we spent last year. And when we got back, there was just stuff everywhere. This village that we're building here, and like, man, like this is the worst. Like, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made. Like, I'm building this thing in the middle of nowhere in Montenegro, and it's just not going to plan. And there's so many challenges with the language and with working with people, and it's like, this is so out of my depth. Like, I know strength training, and I'm okay with online business, but I just don't know this stuff, and I can't fix it. And it was like having that feeling, and then I was like, why do I stress about this? Like, why don't I just have fun this morning? Because I'm going to move all this shit around anyway. I'm going to tidy this anyway, so I may as well do it with a smile on my face, because it's going to be exactly the same physical thing. And then, 10 minutes later, I was having the time of my life, just thinking how funny it is that, I get to do this. And you're thinking about people visiting here. There's someone else. There's 2 guys here there's a South African and an Irish man here. And there's a bunch of people coming from all over Europe and Latin America and whatnot the next couple of weeks. And, it's just how you look at it. Like, literally, you can flip it in a short period of time if you choose to. And 100%, it's like golf, isn't it? A bit like being a kicker is a bit like being a golfer, where you're going to have bad shots, and it's going to go off into the rough. And but you have the added pressure of a whole team, the coach, everybody bearing down on you, which is maybe a little bit different to golf, where you got to just deal with it yourself. Where do you want to go with it? Where are you taking your kicking?
Again, mate, not too concerned about the external outcome. All I know is it's a journey that I love and will keep doing as long as I'm athletically capable. But if we're going to set sort of checkpoints, markers, I guess, to guide my route, it would be obviously the NFL would be the pinnacle. Yeah. So I'd say that's the goal, that's the dream. But again, man, no. It's not like I'm sitting here like putting tons of pressure on myself. Oh, you've got to be there tomorrow, sort of thing. just enjoying the journey, man. Doing it because I love it, because it's fun. I kick because it's fun, and as long as I can keep saying that every day, I think I've got unlimited potential in that sense.
Do you have distance or accuracy markers that you're kind of chasing, like benchmarks and kicking? Because I was just asking, where do you see it going? But there's that side of what you might play for, but the other side of the art itself, or
sorry, so you're asking like hang time, distance sort of stuff.
Yeah, have numbers and things that you like. Oh, this is.
Yeah, so with punting in the NFL, the sort of standard for them is to consistently hit 4.5 seconds of hang time with 45 yards distance. It's 45 yards. That's from the line of scrimmage, so you've got to add another 14 yards onto that as well. So it's pretty big. But the interesting thing there is, I'd say most people can hit one of those balls. If you take 10 reps, I'm sure one of them will come off nice and it'll go like that. But the real trick about being that 4.5, 45 standard is that you've got to do it every single time. And that's the real challenge. So you basically can't afford to ever have, let's call them like, when you have a kick, you have an A ball, a B ball, and a C ball. If your C ball is falling below 4.545, you're probably not going to make it. Mm-hmm. So it's a case of how good can you make your worst kick?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty weird way to look at it, because most people, you'd think, just sort of think, right, how big can I kick, or what's my biggest kick going to look like? But that's not actually the game. The game is really consistency, because just like you said, there's a lot of pressure on you as a kicker to deliver what the coaches want and what the team want. So if you can promise them that every time you're going to give them at least the 4.5, 45, you're doing your job right. Then from field goals, it's more just it's about just getting it through the posts, and it doesn't matter how it looks. Your C ball has to be able to get through the posts from 40 yards and in, because most field goals don't really go beyond that. The guys who get picked are the guys who are most consistent from 40 and in. So you might see videos of guys knocking over 60-yard field goals, but it might look cool and it might get you on the team, but the guy who plays the games is the guy who will never miss from inside 40. And it goes back to that ABC ball. How good is your C ball? And mate, that really comes down to just reps, man. Because you just want to make sure that if you're going to shank it, it's still going to do what you need it to do.
So how are you going with numbers? Like, is that what you?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say my C ball is consistently a 45.45 on punts. I'd say, well, my season long last year was a 67. So just goes to show, right, how high and low it is, right? So I've hit 67 in a game, but then equally I can hit a C ball that will go less than 45 yards. So it's like, it's crazy to think like, and this is down to the spiral kick, right? The spiral is pretty inconsistent. But yeah, it's just a game of me getting more consistent. So it's, if I was to say where I'm currently at, I would say I'm capable of hitting NFL standard punts, but I'm not consistent enough to deliver what they need me to yet. So for me, the game now is all about just how good can I get my C ball. And then on field goals, again, I'm capable of hitting NFL sized kicks. Like I've hit 60-yard field goals. But yeah, it's just, again, how many times, well, it's just about not missing ever, really. That's the name of the game. But it's more at this point, man, for me, it's about getting more consistent in a nutshell. That's really the name of the game. And it's not very attractive. It's not as fun to watch getting consistent, because it's just getting reps and getting your muscle memory tuned in. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
It looks like you're coming up with some creative stuff in your training methods. It looks like you have been testing some things out, like building. I'm a big believer in building a general base. That's something I encourage with Sonny. he came and did a camp with me in 2016, and we spoke a lot about where he was going with his studies and where he was going with his, religious stuff. Even like his relationship with women and things was a big thing that we spoke about in 2013, 14, when I was just getting married and going to be a father, and he was at a bit of a different stage. But it's 2016. We were talking about we were juggling a soccer ball in the backyard and juggling with our feet, and I had a French guy there who was really good with his feet because he played a lot of soccer growing up, and we were just talking about, well, what's the advantage of being really bad with your feet? Like, why, what would be the negative of being comfortable with kicking a ball? And there isn't to it. And so he took it on himself to practice some kicking every training session in 2017 when he came back from his Achilles injury at the Olympics, and he kicked for tries that year, and he kicked for some ugly ones as well. But that's Sonny, like he'll himself and he'll make some plays that no one will make. And imagine 110 kilos, 6'4", running at you, lean, steps off both feet, offload, run over the top of you, throws a long pass, got a short ball, offload, and then all of a sudden he's kicking as well. It's like,
what can he do?
He's just looking at them at training, and the things they're doing is just like mind-boggling. But I think that general base is sometimes neglected, and I think like the creativity of playing around with different things and being able to kick off the other foot and being able to kick backwards and all that sort of stuff. It should be there for the play element, for the psychology, but I also think it does raise the standard of your basics if you can do the crazy shit as well. The famous story in Australia is Donald Bradman, who was a cricket player, and the famous story is that he would practice hitting a golf ball with a cricket stump against a water tank. So the water tank would be carbon iron, the golf ball's already really small, and the cricket stump round. And that was the legend of how he became. He had an average 99 when the best average was, in the 40s or 50s of the nearest player. So he set a new standard in the game. And this legend is that he did it through getting a lot more practice of something that was more dense. What are your thoughts on this kind of philosophy?
Mate, have you heard of the Steph Curry story where they made a smaller hoop for him?
I didn't know that.
Basically, they made a hoop that was only just big enough for the ball to go through, and that's what he practiced with. And I feel like that's sort of in line with what we're talking about right now. It's like, if you can do things that most people would consider are, impossible, keep doing it anyway. You sort of refuse to take no for an answer, and you just try and find ways to make it work. When you actually go back then to the main task you're trying to do, it comes a lot easier, right? Me doing those little flick up field goals I do. I don't know if you've seen it, where I like spin the ball on the ground with my feet and then you kick it as it's spinning. That is such an unlikely shot. Like, to pull that off 10 times out of 10 is just not going to happen. But by trying to sort of chip away and find ways to make it happen, you start unlocking these sort of paths towards being better, right? And there's definitely something about just getting really uncomfortable and doing things that you will blatantly fail at, but continuing to be optimistic about it anyway, because you will get better. It's like those weighted rugby balls. Have you seen people who throw the rugby balls that have weight in them? You spend a session doing some passing with that, and then you go back to a normal rugby ball, and all of a sudden you're just flinging them, man. So it's I think that's the kind of deal here. It's kind of like being in the gym, right? You lift heavy weight on your body so that when you don't have the weight on your body feels a lot stronger and faster. That's basically the philosophy there, isn't it, man? It's doing things that are too difficult to execute, but you find ways to make them work, and it translates beautifully into the things that you want to do then.
Did you play much on the field in American football or rugby in America?
So I played 4 years of rugby in Lindenwood, and I did very well there, man. I was a fly half, and I won All-American honors and was actually nominated for the best player in the nation. Have you ever heard of the Heisman Award?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but in rugby. And so I did really well, man. But I basically got to a point where I was on the verge of going pro in the MLR out here. And I decided that I was not in a rush to go there, because I'm not sure if you know much about the MLR, but it's kind of growing, let's say. Still early. And as much as I, grew up dreaming of playing pro, and I idolize guys like Quaid and Sonny, I just didn't see the MLR as a truly professional experience at that point. So I was like, right, I'm not going to rush into that if I've got opportunities to try other things and sort of expand my horizons through football. So that's kind of the decision I came to. It was like, yeah, let's give this a go. I'm still young. I've got my life ahead of me. So let's just try it out, see what comes of it.
So do you still have it in the back of your mind that you might go back to that path in the future?
Oh, it's an option, man, isn't it? All I know is that I love kicking, and I'll keep doing that. And, if someone wants me to come back to rugby and it makes sense to me on my end, who knows? Maybe. Yeah. But yeah, again, it's options, man. Keeping my options open. I think it's better to have more options than no options, right?
100%. Yeah, if guys are on the call, if you want to ask any questions or you share anything, you're welcome to. You can either put your hand up there or use the chat, and then we can see that you want to talk.
One guy put a chat in there, said, "Can restraints breed creativity?" Restraints.
It was kind of us around the because you're talking about content consistency, and that's when I sort of about the kicking consistency. That would be an example of, the restraint is it's practice time, get out in the field and kick the ball. And so there's an element of that a lot of times in sport. And for some people, it's probably right in business that it's like, okay, today you have to get this done, and not every day is going to be your best day sending out email or writing a piece of content. I understand it's not your situation, but I think that was kind of what he was pointing at, of like sometimes the restraint of, okay, this is the rule, can push creativity forward potentially.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he's spot on. You've got to set boundaries within which you can have fun with it, basically. So because otherwise, if you don't have boundaries, you're just going to be a mess. It's going to be chaos, right? Because like when I talked about my kicking journey, I was talking about checkpoints to keep me sort of on a path. Yep. If you don't have checkpoints or boundaries, let's say in this situation, you're kind of just going around. You might be doing something, but are you making progress towards something? Are you making progress towards a goal that is not where you currently are? So yeah, I definitely see there being a big importance on creating boundaries. But yeah, I like that he used the word creativity to describe the sort of action of moving, because once you've set the boundary, don't feel then that you have to do things like everyone else and you have to be robotic and follow a system. Have fun with it. So it's like, pick your boundary and then just go play like you're a kid, man.
Love it. Can you share a bit around your strength training journey and how you're looking at that side and how much it influences your kicking? What's the norms there? What role does it play for you?
Yeah. So when I first got into kicking with football, I noticed that I was doing a lot less running and just way more reps of kicking. And it was having it had an impact on my body that was different than rugby did. I noticed that my joints and ligaments in my legs were starting to get very achy and tired. So I realized, right, I've got to be accountable here and maintain the rest of my body as if I was playing rugby, because that's what I was used to. So I started having to do my own running stuff and basically continuing with my rugby training in a non-rugby environment, just to make sure everything, my body was, feeling good. Also, just the specifics of my strength training has changed. So I used to just gym like everybody else in team environments where you just sort of go through a program and you just do what everyone does. But now I put a huge emphasis on heavy and slow. Those are the two sort of cues I work with when I'm in the gym now, especially with my legs, because my tendons and ligaments are going through so much sort of plyometric or ballistic impact stuff that in order to keep them healthy, I have to give them equal and opposite, right, of slower, heavy forces. It took a lot of research to understand why my tendons were feeling the way they were feeling, but it ultimately comes down to me just, kind of explosively battering them every day. Because kicking is a plyometric exercise. So I have to basically, when I'm squatting now or doing my RDLs, for example, it's just, I make a conscious effort to load the weight up, but take it slow. So the ligaments can really feel the tension going through them. And it sort of allows them to gain some strength and allows me to keep kicking, basically. Because if I just kick and don't build strength, it's a degenerative process. And I want to kick as long as I can. So I want to rebuild the sort of, or prevent more damage from occurring.
Patella and hamstring tendon issues, or?
Patella, yeah. My plant leg, patella, is, yeah, it's got tendonitis basically. And I've also got Achilles tendonitis in the same leg. But yeah, again, it's just sort of degenerative from just, doing so many reps of kicking. So now I'm in a phase of my sort of athletic career where it's like, right, I realize that my body is not going to last forever if I keep kicking the way I'm kicking. So I have to take a sort of proactive approach to not only heal the damage, but also prevent more from occurring. But that's, yes, it's all in strength training, man. So I spend a lot more time in the gym now than I used to, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Have you come across Nizo guy, Ben Patrick?
Yeah, I have. And I actually gave it a good shot. I did about a month of his program, and I just think my tendons were too damaged to go directly into what he was teaching. So I did lighten the load a bit. But again, man, it was so direct on the tendons that I was kind of like, right, I need to find something as like a sort of intermediate ground before I go fully into the knees over toes stuff. But at this point, man, it's sort of, I found my own process through just getting in the gym and doing this, progressively loading the weight whilst maintaining a slow tempo. And yeah, sorry, go on.
Do you squat all the way down?
Do I squat all the way down?
Yeah, do you squat ass to grass or?
No, I don't, mate, because I've got. Do you follow the Squat University guy on Instagram?
I know who it is. I don't go too deep into his stuff, but I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So basically, I watched a lot of his stuff because I used to squat ass to grass, but that's where I actually started developing my knee problems. But I watched his videos about how some people can't naturally do ass to grass squatting because it causes their back to round, like the hip hinge they call it, and it's from this anatomical thing really, where it's like your hip sockets are so deep that it prevents the back from staying straight all the way down, and he discourages squatting ass to grass if you can't do it properly, really. So I go as far as my hip sockets allow me to, which is probably about parallel with the ground. But the most important thing for me, man, is just maintaining good form, because anyone can squat heavy weight with a bent back and knees crumbling in, So I put a big emphasis on just trying to stay in good form and, again, staying slow with it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to trigger that strength gain rather than sort of plyometric or explosive stuff.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I think you've arrived to some important truths there in terms of you're going slow and focusing on form and not causing damage. And I can also see
how applying the knees over toes stuff, if you apply it as is and you've got tendonitis and you've had it for a significant period of time, like it's probably going to feel worse if you just jump into it.
Right.
I had patellar tendonitis for like 20 years, and I became a toes guy in 2018, and we were both trained by Charles Poliquin, who's a mentor to me and to Ben. And so we got on, we've got on really well, Ben and I, since 2018. And I started the coach wing of ATG for coaches, like I was part of his business basically. I still have a share there, and some of the guys on the call, that's how we met, sort of through the connection with Ben. The thing I would say, I've made a bunch of videos around this. I made like a YouTube series and stuff that's most popular that I've ever made is around the tendon stuff. It's something, so it's something I'm quite passionate about and interested in.
Yeah.
The thing would be that I would say is like you're spot on with, not overly stretching it and under load and not going too fast under load and all those sorts of things. The thing I think I would consider, or I would consider testing again, would be like use more of the backward walking and the backward sled, reverse treadmill. He's now bringing out these dead mills, which is like a treadmill turned off. And the idea is that you can bring a significant amount of blood flow and even like growth factors and hormones by stressing that area metabolically, and can be like a key driver for healing if you can bring like a load that doesn't have any stretch, it doesn't have any eccentric, because the eccentric is sort of the key part of the remodeling, right? If it's constant and it's light and there's no stretch, then that can be that we found that to be a really powerful way to bring new life into the area. And then it is a balancing game, and it's tricky if you're still kicking all the time. I get that it's a balancing act between kind of resting and then doing your kicking at the highest quality. It's always going to be that balance, but I would it'd be good to have consider having more of a deeper dive into that. And it's something that most of the people that I've worked with have had knee tendonitis or knee reconstruction. Like most of the coaches I've worked with have had those injuries. That's why they've come into the network, and they stay because they get a result oftentimes, So but it's a tricky one to deal with, and it's good that you've taken responsibility for it and you've found some stuff that's helping.
Yeah, mate. Well, there was a point where I was sort of playing the victim role and being like, oh, I've got this injury, I've got to stop playing, I've got to wait for it to heal, and I've got to, see the doctor or whatever. But I noticed after a while that all the stuff they were prescribing me and suggesting I do was just, it just wasn't it for me. And it was, when people throw the surgery idea out there, I'm just like, no, the body's an incredible thing. Why would you, unless you completely torn your ACL off the bone?
Yeah.
Like, I personally just wouldn't go for surgery, because like you look at someone like Ben, he's had the worst that you could probably get in terms of your knees getting injured, but just through consistent effort, you can transform your body. I basically got to a point where I was like, right, this pain's not going away unless I do something about it myself. So that's where I just started, right, every day I'm going to mobilize it and stabilize it. And as long as I just keep working at that, like I've kept working at everything else in my life, there's going to come a point where I feel pain-free again. I'm not there yet, but I know I feel less pain now than I did 5 months ago. So that for me is a positive trajectory. So that's all I need to know, that what I'm doing is working, and I got to keep doing it, and eventually I'll be sweet.
Love it. Niels, Stephen, Kevin, Ben, who are on here, are all rugby guys. Ben's actually Australian, living in the US, and played for the USA a bunch of times.
Oh, nice.
Evan's Welsh, but he's been playing rugby in the, and now he's a punter and field goal kicker in college there, and he's really made an art out of his kicking.
Unreal.
You there, mate?
Yeah. We got you.
You got me there? Can you hear me?
Hey, mate, you right?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I was watching on YouTube live. And I thought I'd just jump in because I heard you're at Lindenwood for 4 years.
I was, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I coached Fairfield University,
Okay.
the rugby program for 4 years. So, yeah,
Nice.
no, mate, when were you there? In here? Sorry.
Yeah. So 2018 to 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, great time. Loved it there, mate. It was an awesome experience.
Yeah, it's one of the best programs in the country. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's Fairfield? Where is that?
Just about an hour north of New York. We're in D1A.
Connecticut.
D1A, I think. Yes, correct.
Got it.
Yeah, mate.
Do you know
mate.
Eric Naposki?
Oh yeah, yeah. He's a Fairfield boy. He's from my hometown,
Yeah.
so I helped start up that rugby program. And
Good stuff.
So Eric's he's gone on to some really big things, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a good lad. I actually spent two summers playing sevens with him in New York. But yeah, he's a great buddy of mine, and he's told me all about the sort of his roots of being a Fairfield, Connecticut boy. So it's awesome to hear that, man.
Yeah, good stuff. And mate, I see you're kicking. You're basically just focusing on kicking now.
Yeah, well, focus or just enjoying it, really, mate. It's it's just a new opportunity, something to have a crack at, and it aligns perfectly well with what I love, which is just going down the field and trying to get better at my skill set. So it's a great opportunity for me, man, to just keep doing what I love, So if something comes of it, that'd be awesome. But yeah, more than anything, just happy to keep on my journey and keep enjoying the process,
Good stuff, mate. Oh, it's great to hear. With the goal of getting back here for the NFL, I hear.
Well, yeah, it's like I was saying
Ultimate.
earlier, it's a sort of checkpoint, isn't it? It's a
sure.
Why not? That's the direction, that's the pinnacle. It's just like when I was playing rugby, the goal was to play for Wales. It doesn't matter if it doesn't happen or not, but why not shoot for the stars? You know what I mean? So
for sure,
that's sort of the perspective I have on that, man. Yeah.
Good stuff.
How do you find the culture in American sporting culture versus the Welsh rugby sporting culture?
Yeah, good question, man. Definitely different. Definitely different. It's a lot more egotistical, I'd say, in football. It's all about, it's it might be a team sport, but I'd say it's a bunch of individuals within a team. Whereas rugby is, you're a bunch of lads sort of putting your bodies on a line for each other. And there's just a lot more love in rugby, man. And I do miss that about rugby. But yeah, I guess the whole egotistical thing I talk about comes from this pressure to perform, right? Because in football, there is a lot more pressure on each person to deliver. So I think a lot of people's natural responses are probably a fear-based response where it's like, right, oh shit, I need to be the one who does this right. And yeah, it kind of drives people to go in their shell a bit and start to sort of only think about themselves. But yeah, man, that's not something I want to concern myself with at this point. I'd rather just keep my own space, a good space in my own head. And, I accept that I'm probably in an environment that's a bit more cutthroat and probably not as loving. But as long as I can keep my own sort of space a loving one, then I'm not fazed by it,
Is there a higher standard of excellence and achievement with high school players knowing that they can win a college scholarship and college players knowing they can make tens of millions if they crack it? Like, do you sense also that is there more drive compared to the rugby in Wales, or where there is still that professional hope and there's the chance to play for Wales, but it feels like it's a different sport culture that I imagine would be different at the youth level.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I guess it's very like when you think just surface level perspective, right? you're a kid who maybe doesn't have a lot growing up in America, which there are a lot of people in that boat, you'd see something like football and go, oh, that's my ticket out of poverty, and that's how I'm going to be successful in life. So naturally, they kind of put a heavy weight on what they do on the field as sort of their identity, and that's where the ego comes into play, right? So it's I think it's problematic, but I can't change that. But yeah, you look at Wales then and you think, right, there's one team in Wales that is the national team, and they have 30 boys on a squad, let's say. Of course, when you're a young kid, you're very optimistic and you say, I want to play for Wales, and you ask everyone else in your team, do you want to play for Wales? They'll say yes. But by the time you turn 16, lads start saying, oh no, I'm interested in girls now, or I'm interested in doing these other things. And it's just like, that sort of drive, I think, goes away. But again, in football, that's always there, because it's a bit more real for them. It's more like, if I don't do this, I've got nothing else. So yeah, that's definitely present. And yeah, it's a tough one to comment on, really, man, because I didn't grow up in their shoes, So it's a bit of a unique perspective, I'd say, compared to a Welshman growing up just sort of playing rugby with his mates,
100%. Yeah, other guys have any questions before you? Yeah, Stephen, you got something?
I'll jump in because I grew up in California, so I have with youth sports and stuff. I played soccer my entire life. So just hearing from kids, it comes a lot from the parents. The parents like to, I don't know how it is in Europe, but it's like the parents are telling their kids that the only chance their kid has is like making the sport. And then it goes straight to the kids' brains of like, okay. And then they'll tell their kids too, like, you're the best player on the field, and they're really not, but it's just like what they're told at home. So then they get on the field and they have that ego that you're talking about. Yeah. And they also have that aspect of like, if they mess up, they're going to get reamed at home. So they there was a lot of kids that I played soccer with then they were like, yeah, my dad's going to yell at me the whole way home. So they have like that mentality of like, if they play bad, they're gonna not have a good day. So I don't know how it is in Europe or in other parts of the world, but that's just what I've had an experience of having different people.
And mate, think about how that will then prevent that kid from going on to be as good as he possibly could be. Because if that kid is afraid of making mistakes, how is he ever going to get better? If you don't make mistakes, you're never going to grow. You're never going to improve. But if you've got a kid then that at the age of 10 is scared to do anything that might be a risk or might be a mistake, he's never going to get good. And he's basically dealing with this pressure of his parent wanting him to be good without making mistakes. It's an impossible standard. And yeah, it's got to go, man. I really hate that idea of, leadership or parenting where it's just like, you've got to be great, but you're not allowed to mess up on the process of being great. It's such a stupid idea, man.
100%. Yeah. I just my also the other thing I want to add too is I have a bunch of so when I started squatting, I was in the same spot of like I could only squat like 90 degrees was max for me. And I thought I had to watch Squat University all the time, and I was like, oh, I just can't do this. I actually took squatting off for a very long time and just worked on my split squats, and now I can squat like really deep. I realized a lot of it was from kicking. Your legs are crossing and your groin gets messed up quite a bit. So as you're like going down into the squat position, the hips aren't opening up. At least that was my experience with it. But the split squat with stretching the hip flexor, opening up the groin helped me get like a deeper squat. And now I can just sit in the squat and work my tendons, because long range and stuff, as Keegan was saying about like long range, short range, training tendons. It's good stuff to check out.
Sweet, man. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I bet, my tendons are probably all jacked up in my groin, man. So maybe I need to just get a bit more mobility down there. Yeah, that's interesting, man. Thank you.
Of course.
The thing I would say, like because I love your energy, Evan, and you're coming back to the love of it, and that really comes out in your content and everything. What I've just experienced with traveling the world and building this here in Montenegro, and we're building one in Vanuatu as well, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, and one of the least developed countries. They had French colonization, and they didn't do much there. And it's just I've had this experience of what builds these different cultures, and there is something really special about the American and about European, the British culture, that when you travel a lot and you start trying to do things in other cultures, and I work with men from all over the world as well, and it's like there is some serious stuff wired into certain cultures around doing really well. And I think that's where a lot of the sporting stuff comes from, and the private schools and the rugby. It's not just about the ball and who wins. It's about building a culture that lasts for decades and centuries. Yeah. And there is something beautiful about the American achiever culture. Like there's a dark side to it, but there's a bright side to it as well. Like I was just in a room with Stephen Cox in Florida, and there was maybe 40 coaches from around America. It's the first time I've been in a room full of Americans, and we were doing the ATG stuff. It was an ATG event for the coaches, and I've never been in a room like it. Like the amount of positivity and the willingness to do better, to achieve, to get after it. I literally haven't been in a room like that in Australia or in Europe or anywhere else that I've been. Yeah. And there is a dark, but there's a light also to that, like extreme achiever, innovate, like get stuff done. That is great as well, and it's really like the opposite can be found in other parts of the world, and that can be, that's not the solution either. Like, so yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I'm 100% in agreement that Americans generally are more optimistic, and it's a great thing for, like you say, achieving. If you want to achieve great things, you have to believe it can happen. But yeah, the dark side of that, like you say, is because the standards are set so high, leadership can sometimes be a downfall, because people will see the expectation that they're supposed to hit and not realize there's a gap between where they are now and where they need to go that requires them to make some mistakes and get better and improve. If they just showed a bit more love from here to there, they probably accelerate this kid's process and get him to where he wants to be a lot quicker than sort of giving him the cane and saying, "Oh, you're not good enough, you're shit." And it just makes people go in their shell, man. And someone who goes in their shell is never going to get to the place that they want to get to,
Yeah, 100%. I think the parent who's always super demanding is not the answer, but neither's the idea now. Like there's all these messages of the parents just there to support the child to do whatever the child wants to do. And, the extreme of it is when the 8-year-old decides they're Spider-Man, and you say, okay, well, if you say you're Spider-Man, then you are Spider-Man, and, you're allowed to jump off the tall buildings. Or if you say you're a girl, then you're a girl. So you're 8 years old and you don't really, this is the conversation that's happening. All these things have their balance, and the parent who's reaming the child, at least they're they're there and they care and that sort of thing as well, where there's a lot of the other side of things where the parent doesn't even buy into the the outcome or the broken home and all that stuff as well. So there's a lot of and as a father, it's a challenging thing. Like I know I need to challenge my son, and my wife is always there to hug him and to tell him it's all okay, but he needs some of my energy to challenge him of, can you do this thing? And okay, you fell down, that's all right, get on with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, mate, challenge him for sure. Like set him challenges, I'd say. Don't set expectations.
Yeah.
That's where the balance gets crossed. It's like, if you've got a father who's saying, I'm not going to love you unless you perform to the level that I expect you to, that's going to create that kid to go in. That's going to cause that kid to go in his shell and feel scared to do anything wrong. I don't think that's how it should be done. You set that standard like you're talking about by loving him whether he makes it or not, but still saying, mate, if you do this thing, I'll buy you a ice cream. Or do you know what I mean? It's incentivize good performance rather than punish subpar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He likes the push sometimes as well. Sometimes he wants to do something. I'm like, yeah, you can do that, but give me 20 push-ups and 5 chin-ups first.
Yeah,
And
he
he loves like earning his little, watch a cartoon or eat ice cream or something. But you're what if you don't mind sharing, like, what have you had that support? Because it is a massive thing for a young man to move himself across the world. And how's it been for your family, siblings, and parents?
Yeah, so I'd say for me growing up, I definitely was one of those kids that was pretty scared to make a mistake at a young age. But through my own sort of self-reflection and self-awareness, I realized that was a downfall that I could be accountable for. So as I got older, I started realizing that whether it was a parent or a coach or any leader, if they were making me feel scared or afraid to do something when I'm there to enjoy it, that's poor leadership. So there comes a point where you can acknowledge whether leadership is good or bad and whether you should listen to it or not. And once I understood that, I was able to go, okay, I'm going to open myself to other leadership and, allow a coach to try and help me or whatever. But if I acknowledge that what they're doing is sort of ego-based leadership, where they're just instilling fear in you to make you feel less than them, kind of just take it with a pinch of salt and say, look, I'm going to act like I'm being, like I'm falling in line, but in reality, I know that my own head is probably the voice I need to listen to more here. So yeah, my upbringing was definitely one where I felt more pressured to achieve. And yeah, my dad always used to say I used to put more pressure on myself than anyone else. So it might have just been a thing in my own mind. But as I've grown older, I've realized that pressure is something you create in your own mind, and you can also dissolve it in your own mind. So that's where I've come to a place now of understanding how the game works, how to get better. And that comes from accepting that, bad things might happen, and they will happen, but it's not about quitting. It's about continuing through those low points, right? But yeah, it's a mentality, man. And a lot goes into that sort of perspective, I feel like. And it's definitely what I believe is what molds a successful person.
Love it. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation, Evan. And yeah, I'd love
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been a great chat.
On the journey. And yeah, I'm sure if you are interested in having conversation there around your knee, Steven's well versed in the system. He's there in California. He's coaching us in our system, or anything that I can support you with. Yeah, the series that I'm talking about is available in the free app that we've set up as well. So give you access to that. It's not. I don't think it's there publicly on YouTube. But yeah, if we can support you around anything with that would be fantastic.
Unreal.
Time to share some of your journey there, and yeah, it is really inspiring. Like seeing someone getting after their craft with everything they've got. Like that's, I think, where we're at our best, and what we should continue to do. Do what we love, and better as we go. So yeah, well done doing that.
Great, mate. Thank you so much. Let's keep in touch after this as well, mate. I guess I'll give you a DM or whatever, shall I?
I'm always, the Instagram's the easiest place.
Perfect.
Good, man. All right. Well, yeah, thanks everyone jumping in. If you want to share something in the athletic chat that you might have picked up from this, cool to hear your thoughts as well. There's definitely plenty of food for thought there in the conversation. I've got a page of notes here, so I'm going to share a few thoughts into the group. But thank you, Evan. Thanks to everyone jumping in.
Cheers, mate. Thank you, everyone.